My attitude is I think it should be the Chargers. If you're Cam Newton, go to California, play for Anthony Lynn. The fact that you're succeeding Phillip Rivers, who was clearly an immobile quarterback. I often use the joke he was slower than a snail with arthritis, and snails don't get arthritis. The fact of the matter is though even though Phillip Rivers could fling that football, he did throw for over 4,600 yards last year. He did throw for 23 touchdowns. He did complete 66% of his passes. He just threw 20 interceptions in the process. I like Phillip Rivers a lot, and I think he can still play, he can still throw the football, but there definitely is some slippage there. And the thing about it is in the modern-day game, you got to be mobile, and he has no mobility whatsoever. You either got to be mobile or you got to get the ball out of your hands inside of 2 seconds like Tom Brady does. That's not something that Phillip Rivers is known to do, so I think that's a problem. If you're succeeding that, by the way, Phillip Rivers is never going to a Super Bowl. So if you're Cam Newton, who has gone to a Super Bowl, and that's what you're succeeding, you got an opportunity to make noise in L.A. for the Chargers. If you were to go to New England, for example, which is another possibility, you're succeeding Tom Brady. You're succeeding a 6-time Super Bowl champion who's been to the Super Bowl 9 times, who's won 17 division titles in 8 years. There's nowhere to go but down if you are Cam Newton in New England. I don't like that at all. I think the best spot for him to do is to go to Los Angeles to play for the Chargers.
I'd love to see him in New England, but I don't think Belichick wants him. He hasn't made a play for him. And the Chargers, the reason Cam Newton was released is they try to trade him to the Chargers. If the Chargers aren't going to give you a 7th-round pick for him because they like Tyrod Taylor more than him, I don't see him going to the Chargers. I look at Washington. Because whatever you want to say about Cam, and even like Tepper comes in Carolina, gets rid of Ron Rivera, successful head coach. But he's like, yeah, the Ron Rivera-Cam Newton pairing, that's good. I want to try to be great. My hat's off to Tepper for that. But they were good. Ask Washington. Over the last, over Cam's career, would Washington have traded their fortunes for the fortunes of the Carolina Panthers? I would think so. And what are the fortunes of a team, really? The most important 2 people and relationship, the head coach and the quarterback. He also has his quarterback's coach there now in Carolina. I know they signed Kyle Allen, and if they really do like Haskins, okay, although Haskins is not Ron Rivera's guy. So maybe you just put the band back together in Washington. If you have Ron Rivera and Cam Newton with Kyle Allen backing them up, and you make a team like the one in Carolina, Washington fans would be happy. You get to a Super Bowl, you make a playoff run every now and then, you're in the mix for the playoffs every year. If Cam Newton is most of what he used to be, that's an enormous improvement from where they've been in recent years.
Well, listen, I think the Washington Redskins have no interest in Cam Newton. Listen, I think the sign was they traded a 5th-round pick for Kyle Allen from Carolina. That should tell you all you need to know about the direction that the Washington Redskins are going. Listen, I agree with Stephen A. on this one. I think the Los Angeles Chargers, to me, makes way too much sense. Listen, remember in 2018, the Los Angeles Chargers were 12-4. They were 12-4. It's not like this team was far off, from being a good team. They were a good team back in 2018. The weapons that they have in Los Angeles with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, they got a better supporting cast than the year that Cam Newton won MVP back in 2015. You plug Cam Newton into that offense, and all of this is contingent on Cam Newton being healthy. You plug him into that offense, being the dynamic playmaker that he is at the quarterback position, because like Stephen A. said, in this era of the National Football League, you have to be mobile to a certain degree. And one thing we know about Cam Newton is still one of the ultimate weapons at the quarterback position when he's healthy. And the Los Angeles Chargers, you're moving into a new stadium. Well, what better buzz can you create moving to a new stadium by bringing in a former league MVP in Cam Newton? Say it again?
I don't think they want him. Why didn't they trade for him? They didn't have to give anything up, really. Look, he was released. If they wanted him, they would have traded for him. I think they've determined that Tyrod Taylor's a better option at this point. I don't know. Look, Cam Newton, I agree with you, Damien. They must be terrified physically of where he is right now. And, of course, because of coronavirus, it's not like guys can work out and really prove it to teams. But I'm baffled by it, but were I one of these teams, I'd take a chance on Cam Newton. The reason I think Washington's more likely to, they traded for Kyle Allen. Well, you can kind of recreate what you had in Carolina quickly. in Washington. And that gets them to a place where they haven't been in a long time. Going from Phillip Rivers to Cam Newton, in a way, although Phillip Rivers is not as good as Tom Brady and Cam Newton's much better than Jameis Winston, is sort of doing that in reverse. You're going from a very different style pocket passing quarterback who's precise and you know, to more of a like risk-taking kind of quarterback. But in this case, you would think to be upgrading, and yet they're not interested. If they were interested, they'd have done it already. The Chargers.
Well, let me mention one thing, and this actually goes back to, I think Stephen A. said that brought this up yesterday. I think it was a good point. I'm very disappointed in the Carolina Panthers and when they decided to release Cam Newton. I mean, you're talking about probably the greatest player that ever played in your organization, guy who's a league MVP, took you to a Super Bowl, and you waited all this time and then finally determined that, okay, we're going to cut Cam Newton. And I understand you try to trade and all those type of things, but you mean to tell me that they didn't have any idea of the direction that they wanted to go early on in the offseason? I just find that hard to believe. And I just think that somebody of the stature of Cam Newton and all the things he did, not only for that organization, but for that community, he deserved better than that.
He definitely did deserve better than that. They screwed him over. There's no way to slice it. You saved about $19 million by letting him go in cap space. That's what they said anyway, if I remember correctly. The bottom line is this. You have a situation where you could have let him go earlier. There was an opening in Indy, of course. You got the situation where you're the Washington Redskins. Of course, you trade for Kyle Allen. You're trying to tell me it's best for Cam Newton to end up back with Ron Rivera, with Kyle Allen, with Dan Snyder swearing up and down that Dwayne Haskins is his guy. I don't know if that's the ideal situation to walk into for Cam Newton. That's why I still say the Chargers. But there is no question. We're saying that, and we're definitive about it in part because of the lack of options available to Cam Newton, because of how late the Carolina Panthers waited to let him go. They disrespected him. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.